Hello, everybody, and today we are talking about the secret history living in your aquarium, and more specifically, we are talking about common snails. So I have a video on nearite snails if you want to check that out. Also on the more rabbit snails, apple snails, some of the other snails that are out there. But what you are most likely to find / pick up and magically just have appear in your tank are these Ramshorn snails. Their name pretty apt because it looks like a chauffeur or a ram's horn, a curly ram's horn out in wild. So, in any case, if you look at them, they are basically like land snails in their anatomy. They need somewhat calcium to build their shell and some carbon, as well as other vitamins and nutrients. But they come in a wide array of colors and sizes too. There's some strains that stay small, and there's some that get very big. Now, most are going to get no more than an inch across in diameter if we are talking about Ramshorn snails. The other very popular snail / snail that you just can't control and it shows up is the bladder snail or the pond snail. Kind of interchangeable. There are several species, but they're quick little snails. Check out them move. So they locomote with that little foot / mouth that they have below. And a lot of times they'll hide during the day, or maybe they'll clean algae and eat detritus during the day. They are omnivores. They will eat anything that they can. If nothing will, if no one stops them from eating it, they will. So as you see here, they also like to mate during the day. That's what's going on there. But they will eat the bodies of dead fish. They will eat leftover food. They will eat moss. They will eat algae. They will not, however, very often eat plants unless it is the last resort. You may see your snails chewing on plants like, for instance, this crypt. But what they're usually doing is eating the dead tissue off of it, just like these shrimp are. They like to eat bio layers of fungus, mold, little teeny bugs, microscopic bugs that you can't see. That is what they like the most, and that's what they're usually eating. When you think they're eating a hole through your leaf probably already had a hole in it. So they are a great little companion for anybody who wants to keep their tank clean, that's for sure. However, if you overfeed them, or if you have other fish in your tanks, so for instance, those are albino Ramshorn snails. Here we have another type of snail, which is a Ramshorn snail, but these guys, if you take a look, these are called blue, even though they're not quite blue. They're like a gray color, and their foot is more of a gray color as well. But these are larger. These ones get to about 1.5 inches, and they're in a completely different tank with very different settings. So this tank here has a pH of around 5.5 to 6.5. Very low for the other fish that are in it. Most of them are little rasboras and things. And there are a lot of shrimp in here, nano shrimp. So shrimp and snails go well together. The shrimp can eat particles out of the water. They can eat algae like you see here. And then the snails can get the flat surfaces. They can eat the glass. They can eat off the rocks. And they can even do this cool little trick called surfing, which is when they trap air inside of their shell, and then they will hang out upside down, and they can float up by getting air in their shell. They extract it from the water and slowly build it up in a bladder inside them, and they can float all the way to the top, and they can actually eat stuff that's floating on the surface level of your tank. So as far as water parameters and water quality, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. You can kind of neglect the heck out of these things, and they're still going to keep on coming back. These little snails, Ramshorn snails, bladder snails, and pond snails, they lay eggs in kind of it looks like a clear little spill of yellow rubber cement, kind of, Have you ever seen how letters are sealed sometimes? That might be one right over there, actually. Yep. So right over there, there's clear little balls inside that smear of milky off-color to yellow-colored goo that's over there, and the snails will lay their eggs in that. And these snails, they tend to mate sexually, but they can mate without that as well. They can also just sporadically have eggs that are fertilized, and they will have babies. So you can have a few eggs on some plants in your tank, and that can start them spawning all over the place. Or you can have them intentionally brought in, and if you have adults and there are multiples, they probably won't do the asexual reproduction. It's actually kind of rare, but it has been documented officially. Now, like I was saying, as far as water quality, I have kept these things in water as cold as 40 degrees, no problem, outside in a pond in the winter in Seattle. I've also kept them as high as around 85 degrees, and they've survived. Now, if you get much hotter than that, they kind of start to cook, and I'm being literal about saying that. So you have to watch it getting too much hotter than 85 or 90. But you don't have many fish that would want to survive that either. So don't worry too much about that probably. Most heaters don't go that hot either unless you have a specialty discus heater or something. But the little bladder snails also can explode out of nowhere. So they do make little traps that you can place to catch them if they're a pest to you. But really, they don't serve any bad purpose other than they do produce ammonia because they're eating, they eat everything from fish poop to bacteria to all sorts of things that are on the base of the tank. You know, they eat what shrimp eat. They're scavengers, and basically they'll eat whatever they can find, and because of that, anything that you eat and digest in a biological creature, in a living creature, is going to create ammonia as part of the byproduct of waste. And that ammonia then turns into nitrites and then into nitrates. As long as your tank is cycled, this shouldn't be much of a problem. If you have plants, it's even less of a problem. But the plants will totally absorb anything a snail could create usually. But if you have hundreds and hundreds of snails appearing, I mean, sometimes you'll find babies and they'll have hatched and you'll see literally dozens and dozens, too many to count. It's always a sign that you're overfeeding the tank, that there's so much food that the snails can register that, ooh, we can breed. There is so much food in here, we can breed. Now, these snails also, if you're not overfeeding them, or if you have just snails and plants, you may want to actually supplement their food so that they can stay healthy. And what you want to feed them, I like Hikari algae wafers. They're for plecos and fish and other things, but this will last you forever with snails. I mean, they'll even eat things as bizarre as saltine crackers or cut lettuce, blanched broccoli, zucchini, things like that. They love zucchini and vegetables that have been broiled or blanched. And another one that they really love is this Hikari crab cuisine. This the shrimp also like, and they will compete over, but I highly recommend it. I've got links in the description to where you can buy these foods, and also where you can buy snails. So if you're looking for snails, Aquatic Arts, I always work with them. I think they have the best quality critters in town, so I work with them. But as we look in other tanks, I can show you, so these tanks run about 15 degrees apart in their temperature difference. You can see there's snails down here. And when you see that a snail has a clear shell like that, it means that your total dissolved solids, which is your, it's things that are dissolved into the water of your tank. It means that they're very low. You don't have much in your water. There's no calcium. You wouldn't have hard water. If you were taking a shower, it wouldn't leave, the quote-unquote soap scum or rings. And because of this, it makes it hard for their shells to form, and it can make them very brittle to the point where, a little betta or some sort of weak-jawed fish can actually come and snap and smush those Ramshorn specifically very, very easily. So that's where you want to be giving them some extra food that has calcium listed in it, and then just by default it will have carbon because all food in life is carbon based, that they'll be able to disassemble and take the energy from. So this Ramshorn snail here has plenty of calcium. You can see his shell actually has extra deposits of calcium on it, if you can make that out. And he's doing well. He's eating right off the glass. He's stuck on a piece of algae, but he's not actually eating the algae. And you can actually see, if we get this to focus right, you can see his little mouth, his little mandibles, just working away. They just kind of pinch and move, and it kind of works like a little lawnmower. Like, you'll see streaks down the glass of that, of them working systematically throughout the day. So I think they're a great little pet to have, but they're also a great little barometer to have. So whether you have a very tannin-filled tank with wood and other things like catappa leaves, and that would be almond leaves, or alder cones and things like that, to try to keep your pH a little lower for your shrimp colony, like I do in this tank, they're fine with that. They'll adapt to it. And the pH in here, like I said, very low. Sometimes it's as low as 5 or 6. And over here, this pH is higher. And even more so, where I have guppies, I've got pH even higher than that. I've got pH in some tanks that's up to 8.4, 8.5, and the snails still do fine. So just if you have a more acidic tank, you got to know that the calcium in their shell kind of erodes, and so it takes more in their diet or in the water for them to be eating and absorbing vitamin and mineral wise to harden that shell. And so that's just one thing to consider, but it also lets you know if you have other fish where you need to keep track of, hey, how are my total dissolved solids, or how is my calcium level? They're a great barometer for that. And they're also really fun to spawn. If you're playing around with breeding for the first time and you haven't gotten into fish spawning yet, it's really cool to work with snails in that they work very predictably in their traits. Usually when you see a trait, it's dominant. Albinism being one of the exceptions, however. But when you see a trait like these bright pink snails, I just had to wait for 2 of them to do it, flesh color being pink, and then I had to wait for their shells to turn gold or pearl. And once I had 2 of them, they were able to pair off. Now, there's not really a way to sex snails, and the heart of their body, you can actually see in this snail, because this water doesn't have a ton of calcium, you can see that the main guts and internal organs are towards the inner curl of that spiral, which makes sense, right? Because they want to protect it the most, and it's the densest part of the shell. It's the most compact part of the shell, whereas that foot, they come out, and the mouth they come out and eat with, and the little antennae they can sense with and taste with. So they're a fun breeding project, and if you have too many, cut back on the feeding. That's really all you need to do. You still want to keep up with water changes for the sake of most of your other creatures, but snails have been known to survive in very, very high nitrate and nitrite water. They're still going to be harmed by ammonia, so you probably do want to cycle your tank. However, I've definitely had plenty of snails survive even a bleach dip in a plant bath, and yet their eggs or their babies still make it into my tank. So it's a very hard thing to keep away from your tank, and I'll do a video about that specifically. But I just wanted to show you how easy it is to keep them and give you a little bit of background info on what you should feed them and how to take care of them if you do want to have these quote-unquote common snails. I mean, you can get all sorts of cool leopard print designs, jet black snails. There's lots of different types all within this same Ramshorn Pond Snail and Bladder Snail group. Now, they're all freshwater, completely freshwater. They can take a little bit of salt, but not much. They're not brackish water snails, but definitely do not release them into local bodies of water. That's my only last thing to let you know, because they're not native and they will explode in numbers just like they do here. So that is about all you need to know about these wonderful, fascinating 380 million year old creature. Haven't changed since then much, other than going from saltwater into fresh. And sometimes you'll see them come out right to the edge of the tank, but don't worry, they shouldn't climb out of the tank. But if you have a rimless tank, you might want to leave an inch or so. I have had them once or twice fall out of a tank, but really that's more of a problem for nearite snails and apple snails, snails that come out of the water to lay their eggs at times. These snails like to live in the water, stay in the water, and you'll be able to watch them and enjoy them all day long. Alright guys, if you like what you've seen, you can always support the channel by checking out the links below. I've got t-shirts and merchandise, phone cases, things like that on Teespring with illustrations of some of the marine life and freshwater fish that I adore, in some steampunk styled illustrations, as well as also have a Patreon page where you can ask for help 24/7. You'll get my personal number. Anybody who backs more than $10 a month gets my personal number. So if you need more help, I'll try to answer your question as I can. And if you really enjoy what you're seeing on the channel lately, you can definitely step up the level of contributing to the channel, and I can try to help you through any of your fish tank issues or setting up your fish room. That's all we've got for today. Take care of your critters, take care of yourself, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. I will talk to you later. Swim on and enjoy the snails.